All right, so welcome, first of all.
Thank you.
Second of all, let's start with your sport experience. I saw on your website that you kind of grew up around sports. So football, basketball, track, baseball. What got you into sport initially and what made you stay?
Well, I think what got me into sport was just being a young male, a parent just says this kid has energy. We got to find somewhere to we got to disperse it, get that energy out. So I think it was just natural that young males often get pushed into sports, young girls too, just go to sports as a way of having something to do, some type of activity to do, let some of that energy out. And also, sports is a good way to just learn. You interact with other kids. You learn following directions, following rules. Know all those good child upbringing things you get from playing sports, as they say. So I think that's how. And I just naturally had some gifts that naturally led me to sports, but I don't think that's why I was first introduced. I think it was just a send a kid somewhere.
I mean, are you an only child? Did you have any older siblings that were also playing sport that you kind of followed the path of? You cast your sport net pretty wide.
Yeah, I have a sister who is just a year older than me. She was not an athlete, but she went to a couple of like the day camps. You just send kids there, and sports might be part of it, but it's not like you have to be a serious athlete or you got to be good or anything. So there's a couple of those. And then as far as my parents, my mom is she's more into the education thing, like go to school, get good grades. My dad is into sports. He wasn't a player, but he is into sports, like watching, and he's coached youth baseball for a long time now, still to this day. So that is really kind of, I guess, why it was give him a shot at sports, because where else are you going to send a kid these days? So this is not like, I mean, we're talking back in the days, so going into the 90s, I say. And back then we had video games and TV, but for the most part, the fun thing was to go outside and play. And when you go outside and play, eventually you're going to play some games. So I guess sports is naturally happening.
When I talk to youth sport coaches,
Hmm.
normally the conversation is about motivating these kids to get out and play or motivating them to stick with one sport. And early sport specialization is a whole conversation that you and I are not going to get into because you don't apply. Do you think that that made you a more well-rounded athlete going forward?
The fact that I was just kind of doing different things.
Mhm.
Um, I think it helped in that when it comes to the sports specialization, I'll be happy to talk about it because I talk to a lot of athletes and parents. But I think for me, it was good simply because I got to try out a bunch of different things. I was not forced into any one thing. My parents weren't trying to make an athlete. And never did I feel like, hey, I had to do all the stuff just for this sport so I have a chance. Because again, I was growing up in these years, we're talking the 1990s. So even though we had access to TV, magazines, newspapers, and the internet was starting to be a thing, you pretty much only knew what was happening in your neighborhood and maybe in your town or city. I'm from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. So you know what was happening in the city because you could read the newspaper, but you didn't know what was happening in the nation. I didn't know what was going on in Detroit or California or Texas. So it's not like I could look up and see, well, the other kids my age who play basketball, they're going to these camps or they're doing this type of training or they have these kind of trainers. So it's not like I was looking at them and saying, hey, I have FOMO because I'm missing out on all the stuff. I only knew what I knew, which is let me just be better than the kids in my neighborhood so I can get picked to play in the pickup games. That's it. And that's a good thing because it didn't lead me to thinking I needed to do things that I wasn't doing. All I figured I needed to do was go to the park and just work on my game. The good thing about basketball is you can practice by yourself. And let me just get good enough to make the local recreational center team. Then we make the high school team, and then maybe I can play in college. That's all I was thinking about because that's all I could see. Whereas in the world that we're in today, I might have been going to my parents and saying, hey, I need to have this training material, or I got to have a personal trainer, or I got to be doing all these specialization things because that's what every kid is doing in my age bracket who are serious about playing sports. So, mom and dad, if you're serious about me making it as an athlete, you got to invest in these things. That would have been a whole different conversation. So, I think it was good that I didn't have all of those things and that I was kind of randomly doing stuff. And it was all 100% on my own volition on top of that.
What do you think bred your competitive instinct? Because you didn't really have a roadmap.
Mm-hmm. I think it was just something that was innate. I think that was just in me that I'm just a competitive person. That's just wiring. So I wouldn't say it came from any individual person. Again, my dad was into sports, but he wasn't a player. So it's not like he told me to be like that or anything like that. It was just something that came to me as I kept playing. And again, it's not like my parents were trying to push me to be an athlete. So had I just given up on sports, they wouldn't have said, don't give up on sports. As long as you get a degree and go to school, we're happy. That's what they wanted. So it was just me telling myself, go to the court and practice. It was me telling myself, try out for the team again. So it was just competing against the circumstance more than it was competing against a person. I could use the people, but really I was just trying to compete against how can I be the best version of myself by beating the competition in front of me.
When you didn't make varsity until senior year of high school, what did that say to you about your potential as a basketball player?
Well, it depends on what frame we're talking. So about that day and that next week, it said you need to find something else to do because obviously the world is giving you no reality. It's telling you that this is not going to work out. So I started for that first week after I didn't make the team, thinking about how else could I be somebody. Who am I going to be? Because at this point, I'm 16 years old. So who am I going to be when I get out of high school and go on with the rest of my life if it's not going to be an athlete? Because obviously, this is the sport that I've decided to kind of cast my uh, lot in, and it's not working. And I'm not going to be good in any other sports. So what will I do? And for a week, I couldn't figure it out. But the image kept coming back. The image in my mind kept coming back to basketball. The visualization kept coming back to basketball, and I didn't understand that, Julia, because I had just tried with basketball, and basketball had just told me no. Very clearly, it told me no. But the image kept being basketball. So then in my local neighborhood, I heard that there was a team in my age bracket for players who were in that bracket. I said, okay, since basketball keeps coming to me, I might as well just go play for that team. All right, since this basketball keeps coming, let me just go play for them. And I played on that local team, not at my school, and I played pretty well on that team. And it kind of reignited my fire and gave me some confidence because I played pretty well and I was one of the key players. And that told me, hey, maybe basketball can work out. So, then the rest, I went and tried out again, made it as a senior.
What was the impetus to walking on in college?
Meaning like, well, I wasn't invited as a invited player and I didn't have a scholarship. So I already knew by the time I was getting out of high school that whatever school I went to, I knew the basketball team wouldn't know me because who was I? I hadn't done anything in high school for even if I called the school and say, hey, I'm me, I want to come play for your team, they would have said, well, who are you? Where'd you play? What'd you do already? The answer is I'm nobody. I've not really played anywhere and I've not done anything. So there was no point in making that call. So I just figured wherever school I go to, all I'm going to do is find the fitness facility where the basketball players hang out, and I'm going to show up and I'm going to play. And if I'm good enough to make it, then I'll be on the basketball team. And if I'm not good enough, hey, if it's 12 or 15 guys on this campus who are better than me at basketball, I will come to all the games and watch them. So that was my mindset. And that's how I ended up walking on in college.
Did you intend to go to a satellite campus?
No, I intended to go to Morehouse coming out of college. Are you familiar with Morehouse? Yeah, Morehouse is an HBCU in Atlanta, and I actually got offered a 50% scholarship to go to Morehouse. And the reason I didn't go is because the other 50% was too much money. And my parents said, if we take out loans for the 50% that you do have to pay for, they're not going to give you those loans to you because you don't have enough, as much money as you need, you can't get it. We would have to take that out. And my parents said, we'll be in debt for the rest of our lives paying that money off if we send you there. So you are from Pennsylvania. I got accepted to a bunch of colleges. Why don't you just go to Penn State? Because it's in Pennsylvania. The tuition was way lower, and I had grants that damn near made it not have to pay anything if you stayed in state. So that's how I ended up at Penn State, Abington, my freshman year.
And then you graduated from a different Penn State campus.
Yeah.
What was the what was the process of switching from satellite to satellite while maintaining your basketball?
Oh, that was pretty easy. And it happened because of basketball. So what happened is I went to Penn State Abington, which is right outside of Philadelphia as a freshman. It was about 20 minutes from my house where I grew up. So I would, and it's a commuter campus. They had no dorms. So you drove to school every day. So I would drive to campus in the summer when I wasn't even taking classes that summer, but I would go up there because I got to use the indoor facility. Because again, I'm telling you, I grew up in the 1990s. We didn't have access to indoor gyms. So these days you see some 14-year-old kid playing basketball, he has a gym he goes to. That was not our reality. Our reality is you played on the playground. And if it was raining, you just didn't play that day. And I finally had access to an indoor facility for the first time in my life at 18 years of age. I was probably 19 by this point. So I would drive up there every day just to use the gym. So one day I'm walking in the cafeteria mind you, it's not even the basketball gym I was in, Julia. I was just going to get some food in the cafeteria, and some random guy approached me and he starts asking me about basketball. Now I had on basketball gear, but I was not playing basketball. I was just getting food. So I just asked him, "How do you even know I play basketball? And who are you?" I didn't know who he was because I knew I didn't know this guy. And turns out he was on a recruiting job for academic recruiting because he was an academic recruiter from the Altoona campus. But he had two jobs. He was also the basketball coach. So he had approached me because he said I looked like a basketball player and I looked like the kind of player he knew he needed for his team. That's why he approached me. But he didn't even know who I was. It's not like he was sitting there knowing that I was going to walk in the cafeteria. He was doing something else. And he ends up recruiting me, and that's how I ended up at Altoona. The good thing about staying within the Penn State system is that everything transfers over. So it's not like I didn't lose any credits or anything like that. They don't all have the same degree programs. So the degree program I was actually in at that time was, I think it was psychology. And he said, well, we have HDFS, Human Development Family Studies, which is like the sisters to psychology. I got a business degree anyway. I switched majors again, but it was very easy. The whole process is literally you go to the office, tell them something, they click a couple buttons, and it's done like within an hour. So it was that fast.
How did you decide to believe in yourself to the degree that you did?
I didn't. I never had that internal conversation. I mean, it's something that I could talk about now. It's kind of like Steve Jobs. You can only put the puzzle together looking backwards. So I never had a conversation with myself or a book that I read or a motivational speech that I heard that said, "Hey, believe in yourself." What I usually tell people, Julia, is that I was ignorant enough to keep trying when it didn't really make any sense to keep trying. So, and again, this is the reason why I said I'm glad I came up in the era that I did because had I had access to what we have access to now, I would have been looking around a lot more and seeing all the other people who are at my same at least age bracket and looking at what they're doing, comparing it to what I was doing, and I might have been very much discouraged and saying, "Okay, I might as well give up because look how far ahead they are." There were people who were farther ahead than me back then, but I just didn't know about it. My ignorance was actually helping me. So, as they say, ignorance is bliss. The less that I knew, the more it fed my belief that maybe this might work out. So I'm glad that I didn't know what I didn't know.
Yeah, it's interesting how just given a few decades, the entire mentality of discipline and competition has completely changed. How
Yeah,
do you think that people who want to achieve but have the chips on their shoulder and the cards stacked against them can get to the mindset that you had
you mean these days?
these days? Yeah.
These days, well, one of the good things about having access to materials that you can come across people like me and you who are talking about this kind of stuff that can help them. Now, the thing is, you have to be disciplined enough to take in the material that helps you and not taking the stuff that's going to hurt you. So that's where the discernment comes in because you got access to everything. The trade off of that is you have access to everything. So it's having the right people around you. And that's often much more important offline than online. So if you have the right people around you, for example, I have a son. He's very young, but if he decides to get into sports, he's going to have me as his first, coach, so to speak. I'm not literally going to be his coach, but I'll be his first coach as far as like mindset and the way you're thinking about things. And if he's in my situation, like, man, I'm 14 and I'm not on the team, and look at all these other kids who are 14 who I see on Instagram, I can give him guidance on that because I know what it's like, and he's hearing what he hears from me is going to be more important than what he hears on the internet. All right. So I'm going to have much more influence. But let's just say there's a young man out there who doesn't have a dad around who can talk about that or doesn't have a dad around at all. He can find somebody like me on the internet. And I've been that person for a lot of young men over the years with the material that I put out. So it's the biggest thing is really, and I tell this to people all the time when they're trying to advance in life, the biggest thing you need to do to advance is not do more, you need to do less. You actually need to cut down on what you're consuming, cut down on what you're doing, cut down on your circle, and focus on the essentials. As they say, the 20% that produces the 80% of results. The discipline is figuring out what is the 20 and staying away from the 80. The 80 that produces only 20% of results.
How do you tell that to someone who is consistently surrounded by this just at the end of their arm?
I would
How
tell
do
them
you
what I just
tell?
said, and I would just help them understand. I would help them understand it. I would give more context and just help them understand. First of all, 80-20 principle is a principle because it's based in truth. You look around, you see it everywhere in life. 20% of the inputs produce 80% of the results. So, and I would just give them as many examples as possible to help them understand it. Then you look at sports. 3% of high school players play college. 1% of college players play pro. And that's bigger than the 80-20 rule. And if you're going to be one of the few, understand that there's a certain talent level baseline that you must be above. The people who are above that level of talent are eligible to make it. Everyone who's below that level of talent, you're not making it no matter what you do. If you're over that level of talent, you have a chance. Now, amongst these people, you still have to beat them out in order to get your shot. And the difference between one and the other is not often a talent difference. Now, there are some exceptions. If you're LeBron James, your talent is so great, you're going to get a shot, even if you half-ass it. But everyone else, they're all talented enough to make it. The ones who do are the ones who are the most consistent, the most disciplined, the most reliable. And that applies in almost every profession. But most applies in sports because sports is the closest thing to a meritocracy you're going to see. Whereas other professions are much more about who likes who, not pissing off the boss. And in the sports world, if you can play, you can play. They don't even have to like you. If you can play, you're going to be on the team anyway. And that's the only place in the world where that is as true as it is in sports.
So you don't believe sports are political?
Not nearly as much as every other aspect of life. No. So we talk about academia, corporate America, government, any type of bureaucratic organization. It's about who you know and the right relationships. Sports can be political. I'm talking about the players, not the coaching and the management. That's the same as corporate America as far as I'm concerned. But as far as the players, if you can't play, it doesn't matter who you know. Because as soon as you get on the field, it's going to be obvious you can't play. And if you can play, even if everybody hates you, as soon as you get on the field, it's going to be so obvious that you're good. Even if they don't want you, somebody else will want you because you can play. Because the arbiter in sports is the scoreboard, is not a person. People have feelings and opinions. Scoreboards don't. That's why sports is what it is.
Scoreboards don't have feelings.
Right. That's right.
How did you go from a D3 team to a professional contract?
Hustling. I learned how to sell myself. So where I first learned that concept, and this gives the context. So I probably had like 20 to 30 jobs before I became an entrepreneur, even before I became a professional athlete. So when I was a freshman in college playing at Penn State Abington, I had a job at the same time. And bunch of jobs actually that year. When I first got to college, I was working at McDonald's, and I quit McDonald's. I was working at a hat store, and then I quit the hat store. I was working at a movie theater. This is all my freshman year. So I was working at the hat store. And where are you located?
I'm in Nashville.
Okay, so you go to the mall, you know those little hat stores, they're kind of like smaller type stores, but all they sell is hats, like it kind of hats that guys wear. So I used to work in one of those stores. And in those stores is not a whole bunch of staff because that store is so small. So there was a main manager, this woman, she was about my mom's age, and there was me. We would just be in there together. And you're in the middle of the day, you're in the mall in the middle of the day on a Tuesday. There's not a lot of traffic. You're just sitting there, you're just basically talking. All you're doing is talking to each other. There's nothing to do. And I was very intrigued by her background because she had this career in retail management. She had been a manager of a bunch of these retail stores, and she would tell me, I used to work here and here and here. And that intrigued me because, again, coming from the era that I come from, when I was 14, me and all the 14-year-olds in my neighborhood, our parents would say, okay, you're old enough legally in the state of Pennsylvania to go get a job. I think it was 15. You're old enough to get, they called it working papers. You go get this paperwork, now you can go get a job. So they would send us to the mall to go get a job. And we would go to places and say, may I have an application? We would have an ink pen in our pocket. We go sit in the food court and we would fill out the application with a pen. So millennials who are listening to this is what we had to do to get a job back in the day. You couldn't do it on a computer. So we would actually fill out all these applications, and then we go back to the same stores and hand in our applications. And then we would hope somebody called us and we got an interview, and then you hope that you got hired for the job. That was the process. So I would do this all the time, but most of the places I applied, I did not get hired. So no, we would apply at places like where we like Foot Locker, because you want to get the sneakers, or a sports store. I never got hired. I actually became a Foot Locker manager years later, but that's a different story. So when she was telling me that she had all these retail management jobs, I was like, that's impressive, because how did you get hired? Because I was just impressed with the fact that she got hired so much. And she said, I got the interview and I sold myself. She kept saying that every time I asked her, how'd you get the job here? How'd you get the job here? She said, I sold myself. I never heard anybody use that phrase, Julia, that I sold myself. But I immediately understood what she meant. And I asked her about it, but she just said, you got to talk up your personal virtues. You got to tell them why you're a good worker and why it would be a good idea to have you. And that always stuck with me. That was my freshman year of college. So this is 2001. So when I get out of college, 2004, but then 2005, when I'm trying to play overseas, I thought about this, and go back to what I just told you about a minute ago, is that at the pro level, you had to be above a certain level of talent to be eligible to play. So let's just say there are 1,000 jobs, right? but there might be 5,000 guys who have enough talent to play. Everybody else can't play. They're not good enough. But there are 5,000 who can. But there's only 1,000 jobs for 5,000 people. So that means one out of every five is not going to get a job anyway. So I asked myself, okay, how am I going to separate myself from the other 5,000 guys to make sure I get one of these jobs? Now, what most athletes do, and this is their hubris talking, is that I'm just so good that it's going to be obvious that I'm just better than them, and that's how I'm going to get picked. And I knew just from my experience, what we've already talked about, walking on to play D3 college ball. So it's not like I'm some blue chip talent, right? I only played 1 year of high school ball. I said, I might not be able to convince other people that I'm better than these other guys. Maybe I think it, but is that going to be enough to get me a job? Probably not. So am I good enough to be in the room? Yes. But how am I going to make myself better than these other players? I said, here's what I can do that they won't do. And I've always had this way of thinking. I said, by deductive reasoning, what are these guys not going to do that I am willing to do? And I said, most basketball players, most athletes think that just because I'm good, that's enough. I'll just be good and they'll notice it and I'll get on. I said, that's not going to be enough. What can I do? Let me sell myself. Let me sell myself. Let me go market myself. Let me go promote myself. Let me go reach out to agents and find one to represent me. Let me go sell myself maybe directly to a team so that they're hearing directly from me rather than them just going on Google and just looking at 100 players and trying to figure out who's who. Why don't they hear directly from me? I'm going to stand out just the fact that I'm doing something that they're not doing. And I always had that mentality and I use it in sports. And that's really why I got my opportunity because I was willing and able to sell myself and because I actually knew how to do it. Also, I had to add that part in too, because thinking about it is one thing and having the skill to do it is another.
When you look at the NIL landscape now and
Mm-hmm.
the fact that everyone seems to be selling themselves, what do you think that the majority of people, of student athletes who are looking for these brand deals are doing wrong when they're selling themselves?
That's a really good question. I think what they may be doing wrong is whatever everybody else is doing. So anytime you're doing the same thing everyone else is doing, you become one of many doing the exact same thing. So you have to figure out how you can make yourself stand out in selling yourself. And that changes from venue to venue. So for example, as an athlete, me going and reaching out to agents and selling myself to the agents and selling myself to teams was new at the time that I was doing it. But then it started to become normal because everybody started doing it. So 5 years later, you couldn't do the same thing because now everyone's doing it. You got to find something. So you got to innovate again. So you got to keep innovating. So I think with any athlete trying to get a name, image, and likeness deal, depending on where you are, maybe the deals come to you. But if you're not having them come to you, you should look around and see what everybody else is doing and ask yourself, how can I be different from them? And I would say, just as a general rule, I would apply this to anyone trying to do any kind of business these days. Since we have so much technology and it's so easy to kind of copy and paste and mass reach people, for you to put a personal touch on your communication usually will separate you from everyone else because you actually literally, there's no way to scale personal touch. You have to literally do it, whatever that personal touch is. If you're willing to do that, that immediately separates you because you can't, there's no way to fake that. Either you did it or you didn't.
So you went from Altoona to where? What country?
Well, the first place I went was back to Philadelphia because I had a job. I worked my first year out of college for a year. I started playing it. I graduated in 04, started playing in 05. So the first place I went was Kaunas, Lithuania. And that was my first job overseas and first time out of the country actually as well.
What was that like? I mean,
Amazing.
in a post
Yeah.
9/11 world, trying to make your way, I assume you don't speak Lithuanian.
No.
And that was your first time out of the country. You were,
Yes.
was it the first time that you were living by yourself as well?
Aside from college, yeah, but it was great. That was an amazing experience. I would do it all over again. So there are some athletes who, when they leave home, either for college or for, let's say, if they go play pro, they're like homesick and they don't want to go far from home because they want to be near their parents. I never had that problem. I wanted to go as far as possible. So when I was coming out of high school, I would get mail. You know, when you're in high school, you get mail, random mail from colleges. If you have no good grades or good SAT scores or whatever they do now, I would get mail from colleges all over the country. I would get mail from like UCLA and stuff like that, or USC, and I'm like, oh yeah, I want to go there. Let me go to California. That's far. That's really far away. I seen it on TV. It looks like they got nice beaches. Let me go to California. So I wanted to go as far as possible. So I was actually disappointed when I ended up at Penn State. I'm like, this is not far enough. But when I ended up getting my opportunity to play overseas, I was really happy because I get to get away from home, travel, play basketball. I had a solid foundation. I come from a two-parent household, solid foundation. I knew how to conduct myself. I got a college degree, so and I made it as a basketball player. So it was an amazing time. I mean, you're walking around spending euros, and people are looking at you, gawking at you because you see a tall black guy walking around Lithuania. As usually you're only there for one reason, right? So they knew you were an athlete. People want to take pictures with you. They don't even know who you are. So it was an amazing experience. And again, only thing I didn't like about Lithuania is that it's very dark and gray. It's kind of like Seattle. Like if you had to compare it to a place in America, very dark and gray. You don't see the sun for like weeks because it's just overcast. But other than that, amazing.
7 countries after that, what were they?
Let's see if I can remember them all. So there was Mexico. There was I've basically seen everywhere in the United States because I played on a traveling team in the USA. So I've seen every state, the flyover states. I've been to all of them. Then there was Germany. Then there was Croatia. Then there was Slovakia somewhere in there. There was the UK was in there, and there's one more I'm forgetting. Montenegro was in there, and Germany was in there. Did I say Germany? Yeah, I think that's all of them.
What would you say to a high school athlete who is in an NBA or bust mentality?
What would I say to them? Well, first I want to see if they can play, and then I would tell them. Then I might decide based on that. But let's
Okay,
just say
assuming they're not Cooper Flag,
if they're
what would
not
you
Cooper
say to
Flag,
them?
I would say to them they have the NBA or bust mentality. I would first of all get curious. I would start asking questions and find out where they got that mentality, why they have that mentality, what do they think is, why do they think that NBA is the only option that they have? Why are they looking at things this way? And what they're doing to make it work. Because you're not going to go to an athlete and tell them that you probably shouldn't have that idea. That's not going to work. They're not going to listen to you as soon as you start that. So I would just get curious and find out who, what, when, where, why, how. What are you doing in order to get there? And then ask them, hey, is there anything you want to ask me? Is there anything that I could help you with? Anything I could do for you? Or what's the number one thing that you need right now? I find just as a coach personally, whether I'm coaching an athlete, entrepreneur, or anybody in between, that the first thing you do if you are giving advice to a person or a person's asking for help, the first thing I do is get curious and ask questions. I don't just start giving information because until you know a person's real situation and what they really want and their real desires, you're unqualified to offer them advice. And that's where I would start is just getting curious and finding out where this all came from and where they're going with it.
Did you ever work with a sports psychologist? What was the support staff like at your D3? That was kind of before the time that we're in now, where sports
Right.
psychologists are embedded everywhere. Did you have
Right.
any mental health resources as you were coming up through college and then into your professional teams?
Hell no, we didn't have anything. So I don't think that was even a job. They probably have it now at the same school that I was at, but back then, no, we had absolutely nothing. I mean, there was probably a therapist or a psychologist for the school as a whole. I never heard of them. I didn't know about them. I probably wouldn't have went to them anyway. I don't think I had that need, but these days they probably definitely have it. But back then we had absolutely nothing. You went to practice, the coach yelled at you, and you went back to your dorm, and you came back the next day. That was it.
What do you think the difference is between your mindset and the mindset of those student athletes now who are seeking those services?
The mental health thing. I think the biggest thing is that people are just more aware of the mental health thing. So therefore, you're going to get more people taking advantage of it and thinking about it and talking about it and maybe even diagnosing themselves as in need of it simply because it's there. Like if something becomes available, people are going to partake if it's something that is, especially the way it's presented. If you present, hey, and if you have an issue with your mind or your confidence, or you just want to talk to somebody, I'm available. If they had it when I was playing, I'm sure either me or some of my teammates would have taken advantage just because it's there, not necessarily because, again, I don't think any of my teammates ever said, man, I really wish there was somebody who I could talk to about my mindset because we weren't even considering that as a possibility. So, what I think, ask me the question again. I forgot the question while I'm talking to you.
Uh, the difference between your mindset of not needing it versus the mindset of these student athletes now who are not only thinking about it and
Mm-hmm.
needing it, but requesting it from their athletic departments and then seeking the services.
Right. Well, I think another thing is that, especially in the world that we're in today, people grow up knowing about it. So it's just a natural part of your life. It's kind of like you get on a plane now. The first thing you do when you sit down is, where can I plug in my phone? All right. Now, 20 years ago, nobody was saying that because that wasn't a thing, but now it's a thing. So when you grow up knowing that something exists, it just becomes a natural expectation. Or you go into a building and the first thing you're asking is, okay, what's the Wi-Fi? Right. 30 years ago, nobody was asking, what's the Wi-Fi? What's Wi-Fi? We didn't know what that was. So when you just have something as a normal part of your life, you just have an expectation of it. And eventually you partake in it, and hopefully it's helping them. I mean, I'm assuming this helps. I know people who focus on the mental health aspect for athletes and things like that. So obviously there's a market for it. And I think that it is useful because there are a lot of people out there who really do want to talk and they really do want to just get their thoughts out of their heads. Even these days, working with entrepreneurs, one of the interesting things that I find is that one of the things they never had is somebody to simply be a sounding board to hold space for them, to just ask them questions about what they're doing and them to just talk it out. And sometimes at the end of the conversation, I haven't told them anything. All I did was ask them a bunch of questions and listen. And they're like, man, this is a great conversation. And I didn't do anything. I'm just letting them talk. So a lot of times in life, just people in general, nobody listens because everybody's talking, because everybody has a device and everyone is broadcasting, but nobody is listening. So just having the ability to listen and just holding space for people often is very valuable for them.
So you'll see up in the top corner, we have a timer ticking down. We're at 8 minutes now. Once
Yeah,
that timer elapses, the same link that got you into this one will re-up that,
sure.
and we can continue. I do have a few more questions.
Sure.
So now we're overseas in your career.
Yeah.
What kind of spearheaded the overseas basketball blueprint? Was it a lack of, from your own perspective, guidance? Were you hoping to impart that guidance on others? What kind of went into publishing that?
It was actually a combination of both. And one other thing. So at that time, I started playing in 2005 and I also started putting YouTube videos out. So now I'm showing people how to practice basketball. And eventually people start asking who I am. And I tell them everything I told you, I'm telling them. Excuse me. And I tell them I'm playing overseas. But at the time, many of the videos I would be in Miami in an empty gym practicing. So they're like, I thought you played overseas. So I'm saying, well, I'm in between jobs right now. And a lot of times I'll be in between jobs. So the players who had that ambition, many of them were saying, okay, yeah, I want to play for the New York Knicks or the Lakers. But if that doesn't work out, maybe I can play overseas. Hey, this guy's playing overseas. Maybe he knows how to do it. So I would get a lot of questions about how to play overseas. So at the time on my blog, I would blog about overseas basketball. Here's what you do. Here's the steps that you need to take. Here's what you need to understand. Here's how you go to an exposure camp. Here's how you make these decisions. So I would write a bunch of blog posts about these things. And if you looked up overseas basketball at that time, you would see my website over and over again. I basically owned that in the SEO. So then self-publishing was a thing by this point. I think that book came out maybe 2014. And self-publishing was a thing. So I said, why don't I just take all these articles and combine them and just make it into a book? And that's pretty much what that book was. All the articles I had already written, I just put them together into a book and I cleaned it up and made it into a book. So that's where that blueprint came from. Was now, to answer your question, number one, a lot of players were asking about it, and I knew people wanted it because I could see the stats on my website. And secondly, when I was trying to play overseas, there was no guidance. So I tell this to people all the time. All the guidance about how to play overseas was written by me. So when I was trying to play, there was nobody telling me what to do. All I knew was, hey, you can go to these things called exposure camps. If you play well enough, that'll get you an opportunity. That was the only lifeline that I had. And luckily, I went to some exposure camps and played well. That's how I was able to get into the position. But for the other players coming up after me, I could give them some information with firsthand knowledge. And on top of that, I was literally playing overseas while I was giving them that information. So I had a lot of credibility because of what I was actually doing.
What were you doing between 2005 and 2009?
Well, several
Were you
things.
overseas the entire time?
Well, you go back and forth. So you played and you come back. So I would be that between 2005 2009. That was Lithuania, Mexico, USA, Montenegro, Germany. I was in all those places in terms of those years. But in between each one, I would come back to USA, then home, then wherever, then back to USA, home, back to USA. So wherever I was. I was making YouTube videos and putting them out sporadically during this time period. It wasn't until 2009 that I started doing the videos intentionally every day, late 2009, because that's when I got what they called monetization on YouTube. Well, everybody knows what that is now, but back then it was a big deal to get monetization. People don't know this, but believe it or not, there was a time you could watch YouTube all day and there would be no ads. But when they started running ads, that's when it was like a big deal if you got that. So that's what I was doing, putting videos on YouTube. At that time, probably about '07, '08, I read Tim Ferriss, 4 Hour Work Week, which I'm sure many have heard of. That book gave me some examples of how you can create and sell your own products on the internet. So as soon as I saw that, I said, okay, this is how I can monetize what I'm doing. Forget about the YouTube monetization. I was never excited about that because they control it and they can just deactivate your channel. So I figured, how can I control something and make money? So when I saw what Tim Ferriss was saying, I said, I need to follow what this guy's talking about. And that's when I started creating my own products, which is around 2009. My first products were one for dribbling in basketball, one for shooting. They were $4.99 each. So, Julia, that's how I officially became an entrepreneur. And I got to give credit to one more thing is that I got introduced to what I didn't know, but found out was network marketing when I was in college. I didn't build a business in network marketing, but I went to some of the meetings. And in the meetings, they would mention these books, personal development. So I read Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. That's what kind of planted the seed for, oh, you can intentionally alter your mindset. And then Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki, which is what initially told me entrepreneurship is the way to go. Now, mind you, I have a degree in business. But when I read that book, Rich Dad Poor Dad, I said, okay, this is what I need to do, not what the college professors are teaching me. So when I read Tim Ferriss, that's when I was able to take what I read from Kiyosaki and make it make sense.
What went into your kind of your first rendezvous with entrepreneurship in 2009?
Rendezvous with officially entrepreneurship when I sold my products was so in Tim Ferriss's book, he talked about how to sell a product on the internet. And actually, maybe about 6 months ago, reread the 4 Hour Work Week, the updated version, and I remember going through that. And basically, what he said, the experiment, and it's important because people need to understand the implementation piece of it. Because one thing to get inspired is another thing to implement. And he said there was this free platform called Weebly. I don't know if they still exist. I think they do, where you can create this free 1 page website or a 2 page website, basically HTML based. You go on Weebly, create this free website. Then you, first of all, you figure out who's your audience, who's the person you would sell something to. You create the concept of the product. You don't actually create the product, create the concept of the product. And you put that on the first page of the website. Hey, I have this product and it's going to help you do ABC. Then you put a button that says, buy this product now for, and then you put the price that you're going to sell it for. And if somebody clicked on that button, then you would have a second page. I'll get to that in a second. Now, what you would do is based on who your audience is, you go on Google AdWords, this is the advertising platform, and you would buy ads for the keyword of the product that you're selling. So for me, it would be like basketball training. And you put $5 into Google AdWords. Now, by the way, anybody listening to this nowadays, $5 would be maybe $50, maybe $100. But back then you could do it with $5. And you would basically buy your keyword. And when people search that keyword, they would see your ad. They would click on that. It would take them to this little web page you have. Now, if they clicked on the button that said, buy this product for $4.99, on the next page, you don't actually offer them to buy. What you do is say, hey, the product's under construction, but if you want it, put in your email address here. And when it's ready, we'll email you and let you know it's ready. And Tim said, run that ad on Google AdWords. And if you get random people who are Googling to go to your webpage, click on the buy button, they saw the price, and then put in their email address, there's a market for your product. Go make the product and sell it. And that's exactly what I did. And he said, don't use people who already know you because they might just say yes because they like you. Right. So that's why I didn't use my YouTube audience. I had a very healthy YouTube audience at the time for basketball, but I didn't use them because they might have just said yes just because they like me. But if you get a random person to say yes, that's a whole different thing. That's different proof. So when I got people putting in their email addresses, I went and made the product the same day. Then I announced it to my YouTube audience, and I went and emailed the people who had put in their email address. There wasn't that many people. It was like maybe 5 people from the AdWords. And I started selling that product, and it started selling immediately. And when I started making those sales, I remember I used to have the BlackBerry phone. Do you have a BlackBerry back in the day?
I had a slide phone, but my dad had a BlackBerry. Yeah.
Yeah. So the BlackBerry, the one that I had was it had a little red light. So if you got an email or a text, there'd be a little red light blinking on the phone. And I remember I opened the email and it said, congratulations, you made a sale of $4.99. And when I made that first sale, Julia, I said, this is what I need to be doing. because mind you, this is in the middle of my basketball career. This is like my prime years. 2008 to about 2011 was my prime years athletically, between like late 20s, early 30s. And I'm like still knowing basketball ends. All right, the ball stops bouncing. What can I do when I'm not able to jump 40 inches in the air anymore? And when I made that sale, I said, this right here is sustainable. I'm not going to be able to out athletic everybody forever, but I can do this forever. Because all I did was take an idea, make it into a tangible thing, put a price tag on it, and somebody gave me money for it. I got a lot of ideas, not just two. And that's how I knew what I was going to be doing for the rest of my time. And that's what I've been doing.
On your website, you called it a roadmap in reverse.
Yeah.
Why?
Well, one of my coaching clients said that, and I just stole it from him. So where that came from was one of the things that I do is just help people deconstruct. It's basically deconstruction of a goal. So where are you trying to go? No, what would need to be true for that to happen? And for that to happen, what would need to be true? And for that to happen, what would need to be true? So I just happen to be I'm a very logical thinker. I'm a very analytical person. I guess some people call it a systems thinker, and very dispassionate. And I guess the way that I can explain things. So people, I didn't think it was a thing. I thought everybody thought like this, but the more I talked to people, the more people pointed out to me. So I realized that it was something different, something unique than how most people look at things. So that's how I kind of work with people and help people, whether I'm talking to an athlete or a business owner. And yeah, one of my coaching clients, he was at an event of mine and he was giving like a testimonial video. He wasn't saying it to me, he was saying it to the camera. He was like, yeah, Dre is great at creating sort of this roadmap in reverse. And when I heard that, I said, that's perfect. Let me use that. So that's where I got it from.
I also saw the list of work on your game commandments, which I
Yes,
think are just totally applicable to not only sports, but literally everything in life,
that's
as we
right.
kind of alluded to.
Yeah.
Can we work our way through these 12?
Yes. Do you have them written down? Because I don't know if
I
I have
do.
them memorized.
I do have them written down.
Okay, let's go.
Let's start with own your game. What do you mean by that?
It means taking complete ownership of your situation, meaning whatever circumstance you find yourself in, even if it was not your fault, it is still your responsibility. So, for example, I would get athletes back in the day who would say to me, Dre, well, I want to make it as in basketball, but I come from this small town where nobody cares about basketball, or I'm in this country where basketball is not a big deal, or my parents want me to be a doctor, but I want to be a basketball player. What am I supposed to do about that? And that's where this comes from, is that even if your circumstance is not of your making, if your goal is to make it in basketball, then you still have to take ownership of that goal and you can't put it on anyone else, even your parents, even your town or your country, to do it for you. You have to take ownership, which means once you take ownership over a situation, you now have power. And to have power, now you have the ability to respond, also known as responsibility. But if you don't take ownership, then you have no responsibility. Therefore, you become a victim of circumstance.
Master your mindset.
Well, mindset is everything. Mindset's the foundation of everything that I do, everything that I've done, and everything that I teach. Again, regardless of who I'm talking to, I can be talking to a 14-year-old trying to make the high school team. I can be talking to a 50-year-old who's trying to figure out his exit strategy from a business he's been running for 30 years. Mindset's the foundation because the way you think leads to the things that you do, and what you do leads to the outcomes that you get. So anytime we want to change our outcomes, so here's the roadmap in reverse right here. You want to change your outcomes, you have to change your actions. You want to change your actions, you have to change your mentality. So the alteration of mentality is in working more on the subconscious and the conscious. And a lot of people don't quite understand that because everyone understands conscious thinking, which is if I tell you to picture an elephant right now, Julia, you can picture an elephant. That's conscious thinking. The subconscious, though, controls most of what we do. Most of our actions are controlled by our subconscious, which we are not even aware of the thoughts happening down there because most people have never even considered it, let alone have they done anything intentional about it. So programming the subconscious, there are basically three tools to do it. There's immersion, there's emotionalization, and there's repetition. And most people get programmed by all three, but they don't even realize that it's happening. So they get programmed randomly by stuff that they don't even have control over. But when you take control over it and do it on purpose, now you can set your mind however you want to set it. That's why it's called mindset. Then you do what you need to do based on that mindset because your mindset leads to your actions. So you get the right mindset, the actions flow naturally. And then when the actions are flowing, the outcomes happen. So that's how you set your life up however you want it. And that's why mindset's the foundation.
Well, I like this game. Pursue excellence.
What was the third one?
Pursue excellence.
Pursuing excellence is understanding that your highest level is about what you are capable of and your personal potential. It's not about what anybody else does. I remember I was actually just talking about this the other day that Michael Jordan would say that when he was playing, he set a standard for himself that was so high that just by reaching his own standard, it automatically made him better than everybody else. He didn't say it in so many words, but people would ask him, "How are you so better than all the other players?" He said, "I don't compare myself to other players. I compare myself to the best that I can be. And by reaching that, that's how he was already better than everyone else. Because if it was just about beating everybody else, well, he probably wouldn't have had the drive to keep winning after he had already proven that he was the best player. Yeah, that's because he was only comparing himself to him, not to everybody else. So that's what personal excellence is about. Not about how you compare to others, but how you compare to yourself.
Don't fear failure.
Well, failure is, of course, part of the game, and it can happen to pretty much anybody, especially if you have big goals and big ambitions. And a lot of people end up holding themselves back because they are afraid of losing, especially losing publicly and losing in a way that other people would know about or in a way that just makes them uncomfortable or self conscious. When the real challenge a lot of people have is a fear of success. Because when you're successful, what happens is now you set an expectation. Now you and others expect you to perform at that level all the time. Now, everybody else who can't perform or hasn't done what you've done, they're going to sit back and wait for you to solve the problem because you solved it in the past, so you might as well solve it again. That becomes not only an expectation, but that can translate to pressure. People feel pressure because, oh, now I have to perform like this over and over again. Again, you show yourself, you show your teammates that you can be Michael Jordan one game. Well, they're going to be expecting you to be Michael Jordan every game. Now you have Michael Jordan tomorrow, and the day after that, and the day after that. And when everybody's trying to stop you, you still had to be Michael Jordan. That kind of pressure, a lot of people don't want to deal with that because it comes with an expectation and that comes with a mandate. You're accountable now to perform at that level. But on the other hand, if you just stay average and just do okay every day, well, that's what everybody expects of you to be okay. So it's much easier to be okay every day and live up to that expectation than to be Michael Jordan every day and live up to that expectation. So what a lot of people call fear of failure is actually a fear of success because they don't want to fail at proving that they can be successful again.
Be a master of your own destiny.
And that's again about the ownership. All right, where do you want to go? What is your ultimate outcome? And you decide you decide how to steer the ship or where the car is going to go. What I tell people is that every vehicle, anybody been in a car before, a car has only one steering wheel. It might have 15 seats, but there's only one steering wheel. This means you have to sit in the driver's seat of your car and you determine where to go. And emotions are great gas pedals, but they're terrible steering wheels. Your logic and your rational thinking controls the direction of the vehicle. Then you use your emotions to push it forward with the gas. So emotion does matter, but emotion is secondary. So you have to decide what direction the car is going first before you step on the gas. Or you step on the gas without turning the wheel, you might end up dead. All right, it's not a good idea. So being a master of your destiny is about taking ownership and understanding that every organization has to have a leader. So Malcolm X in his autobiography, he says that every organization must have a boss. Even if you're by yourself, you have to be the boss of yourself, which means what does a boss do? They hold you accountable. They say, here's the time to show up. Here's what you need to get done. You need to have this done by this time. Here's the deadline. Here's the process. And if you don't get this done, here's what's going to happen. So you have to treat yourself the same way a boss would treat you. That's what it means to be master of your destiny.
Develop a strong network.
Developing a strong network. I mean, the cliche is your network is your net worth, right? The people that you know provide value and give you opportunities. And that applies in the sports world, not as much as it does in a non-sports professional world, but in the sports world, it matters as well. Because if you know the right person, you can get in the room. Knowing the right person, get a phone call answered. It can get you a tryout that you otherwise wouldn't have gotten. It could get you a chance that you otherwise would not have gotten. And especially in the non-sports world, that the world that I'm in now. And I tell athletes this all the time, that one of the biggest differences between being an athlete and being an entrepreneur is that as an athlete, it's all about competing. It's about beating everybody in front of you, everybody around you, everybody behind you. Just beat everybody and you'll win the day. Just beat everybody, you win. In business, you can't just go out trying to beat everybody. You are competing. I mean, Pepsi competes against Coke, but there's a whole lot of collaboration happening in the business world. Business is much more about collaboration than it is about competition. So that's how can you and I work together and I have something that your audience wants and you have something that my audience wants. So now we both can win by providing to each other in a way that we're working together instead of just trying to beat each other. Again, there's a space for competition, but collaboration carries the day in business, whereas competition carries the day in sports. That's what the network is about.
How do you cultivate wisdom?
Well, wisdom is about having knowledge, but not just having knowledge. Because if all it took to have wisdom was knowledge, then everybody would be very wise because we all have access to more information right now at our fingertips than our grandparents had access to in an entire lifetime. So, wisdom is about which information do you need access to? That's the challenge today. Is not do you have information? It's which information do you have? You walk into a library, there's 10,000 books. You don't have time to read all 10,000. Which book are you looking for? So you have to pick the right book. Then you have to turn to the right page in the book. And then you got to know what you're looking for on that page. And then when you get that information, how do you implement it? How do you use that information? So all of that is part of wisdom. And is also which information do you ignore? Wisdom is not just about what you know, it's about using what you know at the right times and not using what you know also at the right times. Wisdom is not just about knowing everything, because there are sometimes that some of the things you know, you should probably keep them in your head and not let them come out of your mouth or act on them in certain circumstances. That's wisdom as well.
How do you take calculated risks?
Well, it's figuring out what actually is a risk to you because there are some things are considered risky by some people, but they're not considered risky by others. So going outside, for example, this morning I was running outside, and this is probably the most humid day in South Florida so far this year. It was almost 80 degrees at 4 o'clock in the morning. It was very hot, a lot of sweat, and that kind of humidity. It's very difficult to run in. Some people consider it a risk to even running that because they think I might collapse from heat exhaustion. I don't see that as a risk because I've done it 1,000 times. So it depends on what you consider to be a risk. And a lot of people tend to overestimate something as a risk because most people, in my general experience, most people tend to live in a state of constant anxiety, stress, and fear. They're concerned about what might happen to them as opposed to how they might happen to something else. And that's it, the offensive mindset versus the defensive mindset. Now, I tend to think that people who tend to have that offensive mindset, it tends to trend more towards males, but women, especially women who are in sports, because you have that drive, you have that testosterone in you, which is the drive hormone. That I find women who are competitive, they tend to have it as well. But men in general, even if they don't play sports, they tend to have it. So it's just about what do you consider to be a risk, and are you willing to take risk? Because an entrepreneur, by definition, is running or starting a business entity while taking on greater than normal financial risk. That's the definition of the term. And I just happen to be a risk taker in general.
Be adaptable. I mean, I feel like this has become a topic on every episode. I mean, we're almost 120 episodes into this podcast, and adaptability, I would actually say the final four of these
Mm,
are constants in every episode that I do. But
perfect.
let's start out with adaptability.
Adaptability means adjusting to the situation as the situation is. And of course, there are some things that are set in stone. And at the same time, you have to be willing to adjust to things as they happen. So, for example, you see me here, I'm in a suit and tie. I told you I live in South Florida. So I have a young child. I have a son who is 2 years old, almost three. And he's old enough now. Do you have kids?
No.
Okay, so when he was really young, you could put him in a stroller and just walk him around wherever you want to walk in the stroller. Then when he gets a little bit older, now you can walk him without the stroller, but you can just walk him around and that's enough. Now about this age, now he wants to do stuff, so you can't just walk him around. He like, I want to go to the park. I want to go do this. I want to play ball. And I realized about 3 weeks ago, Julia, that I cannot take him outside in a suit and tie because now I got to do stuff. I'm outside. It's 90 degrees. So now at the end of my workday, I changed into a t-shirt and shorts to take him outside. So I had to adjust. I like having a suit on, but now I got to change into the athletic gear because I got to be out with him and I'm walking around and he's picking up coconuts and that's what he likes to do these days. So go to the beach and he wants to walk around. I like walking too, but I had to make an adjustment to the situation. So that's what I mean by being adaptable. And adapting to the situation also just means reading the room. People have to be really good at reading the room. And you have to know there are times when you should speak up and say something. There are times you should stay quiet. And that's adjusting. You got to adjust to the situation that you're in. And as they say, when in Rome, do as the Romans. So you have to know where can you take what you've been doing and keep applying it the same way, and where should you make a slight adjustment to how things go. So another example, there's a gym that I used to go to that was a boxing gym. It was like a fight gym. And I would work out with my trainer there. And even when I worked out by myself, I just wouldn't wear a shirt. I just wouldn't wear a shirt when I was working out. And that was the norm. I'd get away with it because there'd be a bunch of other dudes walking around there with no shirt on in the gym. And that was fine. But one of the gyms I go to now, is not a fight gym and everybody has a shirt on. So now I got to take the extra step of packing a shirt when I go to the gym because it's a different situation. Why? Because I'm reading the room. Okay. I don't see anybody walking around here without a shirt on. So I guess I got to bring one when I come. So it's just adjusting to the situation. It can be a small thing like that. It can also be a big thing. One more example I'll give you is that I like to move around a lot. So I usually get in at least 11 to 12,000 steps a day. I can see it on my phone or on my watch. But yesterday was raining. Yesterday I only got like 7,000 steps in, and my sleep was not that great because I felt like I didn't use enough energy. I can feel it. When I don't use enough energy in a day, it's hard for me to fall asleep. So on a rain, because it was raining yesterday. So on a rainy day, I have to figure out what is going to be my adjustment to be able to get those steps in because I still need to get that movement in, even if I can't go outside. So that's something I got to figure out because it just rained. It was like the first rainy evening in a long time. Now I got to adjust what am I going to do in those situations. So that's another example.
Be consistent.
This is the easiest one. So the discipline, showing up every day to do the work. This is the foundation of when I talk about mindset as the foundation, discipline is the foundation of mindset. Showing up every single day, doing the job. And this is what I tell people is an open secret, Julia, because everybody knows what discipline is. You stop 100 people on the street and say, hey, is there any aspect of life in which you want or need to be more disciplined? Everybody would laugh at the question and say, of course, yes. And they would tell you exactly what it is. Everybody has this answer. And the thing is, the reason it's an open secret is because everybody knows that they need more of it, yet nobody's actually doing anything to get it. So discipline is like a secret way to get ahead of your competition, whoever you consider to be your competition, by simply figuring out a way to implement discipline. And through discipline, you get consistency. Now, the question is, how do you make yourself more disciplined? The challenge is a lot of people go about this incorrectly. They think to make themselves more disciplined, they need to force feed discipline. Oh, I just got to be more disciplined. I got to make myself do it. I got to get motivated. Let me go watch another hype up video on YouTube. Those things do not make you disciplined. They can get you started, but they don't make you disciplined because discipline is about the long term. Motivation is about the short term. Motivation doesn't always show up. So the way I tell people is motivation is like a weekend visitor where discipline moves in. Discipline is a resident and motivation is a visitor. So discipline comes from structure. When the structure is clean, discipline naturally occurs. Example, if you go to the gym on a regular basis, but you're still not getting in the shape that you want to get in, might be because you don't know what you're doing in the gym or you're not consistent with what you do in the gym. So what you do is you hire a personal trainer. They work there in the gym. You hire one of the trainers. What does the trainer do? Trainer says, here's the time you come to the gym. And when you get there, here's what we're going to do. Do this, then this, then this, then this. Take this break, go drink some water. We're going to stretch. Okay, now you go home. The workout's over. Be back here tomorrow at this time. And by the way, here's what you can eat and what you cannot eat between now and the next workout. What is the trainer providing? Structure. When they provide the structure, assuming that the trainer knows what they're doing, you're going to get the result as long as you keep following the structure. Another thing in sports, why do we have coaches? Why do we have trainers, even at the pro level? It's not because the players can't play. It's because the coaches and trainers are providing the structure so that the players are playing at their highest level on a consistent basis. So discipline is a byproduct of structure. The reason a lot of people can't be disciplined is not because they don't want to be, but simply because they have no structure.
Celebrate your wins.
It's just giving yourself credit for your successes. And celebrating doesn't necessarily mean you have to throw a party and stop everything. Celebrating can just mean recognizing I did this. I got this thing done. One thing I do every day, I have daily notes that I write down. And I will write down something that I got done that day that was positive. Hey, I ran outside despite the fact that the heat was crazy. I'll put that down. Even if he's not crazy, just the fact that I did it is something I'm going to put in the notes. The fact that I had this conversation with you is going to go on my notes today. I had this conversation with Julia, and this episode is going to come out at some point. That's a win for the day. It was something I was supposed to do, and I did it. And these are all things that, again, not again, I didn't say this yet, but when it comes to the subconscious mind, understand that the subconscious operates off, again, immersion, emotionalization, and repetition. This is the one that happens the most often, is the repetition. Whatever you're telling yourself over and over and over again, the subconscious mind is going to start looking for that because you keep saying it. So it's going to assume that this is serious to you. It's important to you. So if you consistently every single day recognize wins in your life, whether a big thing or a small thing, the subconscious mind is going to not only start looking for more wins, it's also going to direct you to do things that lead to more winning because you have told it through repetition that this is what is important to you. So this is how you set yourself up for more success, by recognizing the successes that you already have.
I always ask my friends and my family Tell me three good things that happened in your day. It could be I hit
Mhm.
all the green lights on this road. It could be
Right.
toast was perfectly toasted. I bought a
Mhm.
new dress, like whatever it is. What have been your three good things for today? Since we're on the topic.
Yeah, I'll look at my list and I'll tell you, I'll just read them off my list. All right. Number one, I had great numbers on my run this morning. Uh, Number two, it was the most humid morning we've had so far. And I like heat. Despite the fact that I'm wearing the suit, I like it to be hot. I'd rather be hot than be cold. I hate being cold. And I didn't even fill out the rest of it yet because I just came off a live stream. But one of the things going to go on here is I had a good live stream this morning, a stream from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. Eastern. And also going to go on here is this conversation that we had right here. So they'll be my top first four for the day. But I have a list. I have 11 spaces. So I give myself at least 11 every single day.
Do you fill those up?
Absolutely. I must fill them up. That's a mandate.
What do they end up being?
Let's look at yesterday. So yesterday, I complimented my energy for the day. Started the week with really good energy, felt great. I went to the boxing gym yesterday, had a good workout. I handled a whole bunch of my morning tasks before I started my live stream at 8 o'clock. What was this? Oh, my son sat with me for a few minutes before I started my live stream. He's only two, so if I'm not if I'm not playing with toys, his attention span is very short. But I'm sitting here working, and he stayed here for a little while, so that was a development. Had a great stream yesterday. Picked up like 100 new followers on one of the platforms. New babysitter came yesterday. She's here right now, as a matter of fact. She was doing a great job. I recorded 8 videos that I needed to record yesterday. I tried to record at least 8. I did all 8 in one day. Uh, I got suspended on TikTok yesterday, actually, for something that I said allegedly. Then I appealed the suspension, and 5 minutes later, I won the appeal. So I got unsuspended 5 minutes after getting suspended. I stayed off the junk food. I've been trying to stay off junk food. I was eating way too much candy. And the only reason I paid attention to that because when I was eating candy, my son would see me eating it. He would ask for some. And I can't tell him he can't have any if I'm sitting there eating it. So I said, okay, let me stop eating it. So now he can't ask for it. So now I haven't eaten candy in like 2 weeks. I'm staying off the junk food. Uh, some books got sold yesterday. So a couple books sales came through early. And I used my chat GPT custom bot to write a caption for me for my social media. So those are the 11 that I came up with yesterday.
Cool. That's seems like a pretty wide array of life and work attributes.
Yes.
It's awesome.
Yeah. Thank you.
And all of that culminates in this last commandment, live a life of purpose.
Yeah, where are you going? What's your direction? And I believe it was Dorothy. Dorothy was the character from what was that? Was that
Wizard of Oz?
Wizard of Oz? Yes. So she comes across the Cheshire Cat, and the cat said,
That's
Dorothy
Alice
says,
in Wonderland.
that was Alice in Wonderland. See, I get all these mixed up. So Alice in Wonderland. She comes across the cat and she says, "Where should I go?" And the cat said, "Well," she said, "What's direction?" The cat said, "Where do you want to go?" And she said, "It doesn't matter where I go." He said, "Well, it doesn't matter what's direction." So you need to have a purpose, a goal. Where are you actually going? Where are you headed? It's like you get in your car and you have Google Maps comes up on the display on your navigation. If you don't give it a destination, it can't tell you where to go. You go anywhere. All right, there's plenty of road in this town, but if you don't have a destination, where are you going? I tell the example I often give people is that if you call American Airlines and say, "Hey, put me on the next flight to Seattle," they'll say, "Okay, sir, but where are you? If I don't know where you're at, I can't tell you where to go. All right, are you in Dallas? You in Chicago? You in LA? If I know where you're at, then I can get you on that flight. If I don't know where you're at, I can't get you on that flight. So, what is the purpose? What's the destination? What's the goal? And this is the first question I ask anybody I'm working with. Anybody comes to me for help and they say, "Dre, can you help me with anything?" Doesn't matter what they say. First thing I'm asking them is, "What's the goal? You want me to help you with dribbling and basketball? Why? Why do you want to get help with dribbling and basketball? Dre, help me finish writing my book. Why do I need to help you finish writing your book? Why do you want to write a book? Let me help me with my business. Why do you have a business? All right, what's the goal? What's the problem in the business that you need my help? You already got a business, so obviously you know something. What's the point? What's the goal? That's the first question that I ask. And also, and I often say this to men, it's especially important for men these days because we are very easily distracted by things on our social media that would not distract a woman, if you understand what I'm saying. And I say to men, get on your purpose. And instead of you going and chasing after those things will start chasing after you. So you had to get on your purpose. And the man who's on his purpose is one of the most attractive things he can be to a woman. You can tell me if I got that right or wrong.
You're right.
Okay, there you go.
When I'm looking at the array of these commandments,
Mm-hmm.
I feel as though in order to stay on top of all of them, it requires a high degree of overthinking.
What do you mean?
It's just a lot to consistently think about and manage within your own life. Do you think that
Interesting.
overthinking is inherently a bad thing?
Inherently a bad thing. I don't know if I've ever had the question posed that way. I'll answer a couple things. Number one, no, because it depends on what you're overthinking about. So it depends on what we're thinking about. If you're overthinking about, hey, how am I gonna what's the plan for when let's say your dad's in the hospital and you got to decide what you want to do. It's not bad to overthink about that. Right? You should probably think a whole lot about that, what you want to do if you had to make the decision. But if you're overthinking about, hey, am I going to go to this park on the west side of town or this park on the east side of town, then you're wasting time. Just pick one and go to the park. So it depends on what you're overthinking about. And as far as the statement that led to the question, I don't consciously think about any of these things. All the things that you brought up, I don't consciously think about any of it. I like talking about it now that you're bringing it to my consciousness. But as I already told you, most thinking happens in the subconscious. So all these things that you brought up, they're already subconsciously baked into me through immersion, emotionalization, and repetition. I have a practice every single day to get myself mentally where I need to be, that I've been doing it for so long that my subconscious has already accepted it. So these things are already ingrained in me. And anything you throw at me that I've talked about, I can talk about it for another 20 minutes because I've already ingrained it in myself. It's not like you bring up something, I say, hey, well, let me go check my notes on that. Let me see what I have to say. I already know what I have to say because I've talked about it so many times. So it's in me. It's not something that is on me. It's in me. So I don't have to overthink. Actually, I don't have to think at all about any of those things.
That is the end of my questioning. Is there anything about your story that you think that I missed? Anything that you'd like to add a bit more context to? Any
Hmm.
remaining rabbit holes you'd like to go down? The floor is
Well, Well, when it comes to a person's story, Julia, we could talk for a month straight and you still wouldn't get all of it. But so I wouldn't say there's anything that you missed necessarily. Let me ask you, who's your ideal listener? And then I can tell you maybe something that you didn't ask that would be relevant to them.
so the demographic of the listenership is about 21 to 28,
Hmm.
predominantly male, but then there's also a peak at 55 plus of women.
Okay.
That's kind of my listener range. And obviously the younger demographic has a pretty significant female population as well, but I would say predominantly men.
What's their psychographic? Meaning, why are they listening to your show? What are they getting?
I mean, I it's a storytelling podcast, so every episode is different.
Hmm.
I've had athletes from nearly a dozen countries, national
Hmm.
teams, college athletes, sports psychologists. Everything is very mental health based, mental health
Okay.
driven. But they are storytelling as opposed to a click record, question and answer, and recording. So it's
Okay.
definitely more of a documentary than it is a question and answer podcast. So I
Okay.
think that the way that the topic is laid out is for the times pretty one of a kind. Uh,
Hmm.
there are not a lot of mental health storytellers specific to sports just on any platforms.
Yes.
And I think that that coupled with the wide array of guests that I've had on through almost 120 episodes
Hmm.
really has gained traction in that regard.
Okay. So what you said there, the mental health focus. Here's what I would give to your audience: is that the four pillars, mindset wise, of what work on your game is about is discipline, which we discussed, confidence, mental toughness, and personal initiative. And that third one, I want to focus on mental toughness. A lot of people tend to maybe put a separating line between mental toughness and mental health. I often don't talk directly about mental health so much in so many words, but the way I see mental health, and you can tell me how you feel about it, Julia, is mental health is just the human condition. It's just where you are. It's not mental health. It's not like you have mental health or you don't. It's just like you have physical health. Your physical health is how you feel. You feel good, you feel bad, you got something bothering you, your legs hurting. Mental health is the same way. Like, how are you overall? Just how are you doing? Mental health and mental toughness is the security system for your mental health. It's kind of like your mental health bodyguard, is the way I describe it. When your mental toughness is in place, mental toughness is about your grit, your determination, your stick to itiveness. How do you bounce back when something doesn't go the right way? And when you are mentally tough, it protects your mental health. Because when something doesn't go right, instead of collapsing and falling to pieces, your mental toughness says, "Hey, get up off the ground. All right, wipe the tears. All right, you had your 5 minutes to be upset. Now let's get back to business." That's the mental toughness. So mental toughness and mental health actually work together, and that your mental health employs your mental toughness to protect your mental health from the challenges of the world. And the better you're able to deal with the challenges of the world, the more healthy your mental health will be, for lack of a better term, because your mental health is kind of beating everything back. It's kind of like, I don't know who's a famous person, Kim Kardashian walking around. She's got some 6'8" security guard pushing everybody out the way so she can get through. All right, that's the mental healthness, pushing everything out the way so the mental health can make a path. So that's the way I look at it.
Yeah, I mean, I when I bring sports psychologists on, the term mental toughness is normally brought on and kind of disconfigured into its individual parts. What would
Mm-hmm.
you say to someone who is trying to become more mentally tough?
Put yourself in tough situations. The best way to become mentally tough is something has to be tough. You can't become mentally tough with everything being easy and everything being fun and everything working in your favor. You have to actually be in tough situations. So people who come from situations where things just naturally were tough, it may come a little bit more easily to them. So, like everything that we talked about here, I was in a lot of situations that were tough. I either could figure it out or I was going to be out of sports one way or another. But let's say my son, right, he's going to be in a much better situation. He's going to have an athlete as a dad. So I'm going to be able to get him into places that he couldn't get himself into. I know people who he doesn't know. He's going to have resources that I didn't have. If things are going to be a lot easier, so to speak, for him to make it than they were for me. The problem is the cost of that ease is that he will not be tough because the environment's not going to force him to be tough. So how do I get him to be tough? Well, we got to go take him to the I got to go take him to the bad neighborhood and let him play with those guys. Let him play basketball with those kids who don't give a damn about him. And if he can play with them, then he can go be somebody. So I would have to what I would say to people is that you have to put yourself in situations that are tough for you to become tough. It can't all be easy and it cannot all be to your custom tailoring for you to get better. You have to be able to push yourself or most likely allow yourself to be pushed in ways that make you uncomfortable.
Thank you so much for coming on this episode. Let me just check when your episode's coming out. I think you have a bit of time. Um, January, February, March, April, May, June. June 10th, this episode is slated to come out. So you have
Okay.
almost a little more than a month. If anything
Perfect.
happens between now and then that you would like included, please just shoot me an email. Um, I have the picture that I'm going to use for your socials from your website.
Perfect.
If there's anything else that you think you get off this interview and you go, oh, darn, I should have mentioned that, just we can include that as well. Other than that, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. And I'm
Absolutely.
looking
Well,
forward to just following along with everything that you're doing. I mean, your website boasts an incredible array of business. So I'm pretty excited to keep following you. Thanks for reaching out.
absolutely. Well, I appreciate you having on. Thank you for sharing your platform. And my assistant will follow up with you. So anything you need from us on our end, you can just let her know and she'll get it to you.